A United States Assistant Secretary of the Treasury is one of several positions in the United States Department of the Treasury, serving under the United States Secretary of the Treasury. According to U.S. statute, there are 8 Assistant Secretaries of the Treasury appointed by the President of the United States with the advice and consent of the United States Senate. There are 2 more Assistant Secretaries, Public Affairs and Management, appointed by the President, which do not require confirmation. Additionally, there are 2 Deputy Under Secretaries of the Treasury, Legislative Affairs and International Finance, that may also be and typically are designated Assistant Secretaries by the President. Furthermore, the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act of 2008 specified that one Assistant Secretary take on a specific role, Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Financial Stability. According to statute, the Fiscal Assistant Secretary is appointed by the United States Secretary of the Treasury. The Assistant Secretary positions are: Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Financial Institutions, Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Federal Finance, Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Financial Markets, Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Financial Stability, Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for International Finance and Development, Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for International Markets, Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Investment Security, Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Terrorist Financing, Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Intelligence and Analysis, Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Economic Policy, Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Legislative Affairs, Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Management and Chief Financial Officer, Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Public Affairs, Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Tax Policy, Fiscal Assistant Secretary of the Treasury.